Hey everybody, Jay Weidner here, Reality Check. Make sure you subscribe, like, and all that. I want to say to everyone that Gaia has finally removed all of Corey Goode's programming. They've cut him out of all the shows that they did, plus all of Cosmic Disclosure. I'm glad they did it. It took a while. I started asking for almost a year ago for that to happen in public. In private 2 years ago. So he's gone, and he's lost his platform, and I'm pretty dang sure he's never going to get one back. Speaking of Mr. Goode, my guest today is, well, he's infamous in some ways. We're going to use his moniker, which is Shane the Ruiner, and we'll find out how he got that moniker. Hey, Shane, how you doing?
Wonderful, sir. How about yourself?
Great, great. Beautiful sunny day here. So you're kind of a special person in a lot of ways, and I really wanted to talk to you for a while.
Kind of froze on me there. Get back.
Okay, we're back?
Yeah, I think we're back.
So you're kind of a special person in that you were involved in this thing early on, and you weren't involved with either Project Avalon or Gaia or anything like that. How did you get involved with Corey and David?
Well, I was a member of Project Avalon. I didn't post a lot. I think I had like 20 posts by the time Corey had done his thing. I had contacted Corey because he had put a certain cult's name in the right order, where most people tend to mistake that. So it got me curious about him. So I had started messaging with him. We built a bit of a rapport, kind of messaging back and forth. And at one point in time, he asked me if I would start talking to David Wilcock. So he introduced me to David. And at the time, I had gone through something where I had facial paralysis on one side of my face. It was called Ramsay Hunt syndrome officially.
Oh, yeah.
And so I couldn't work or whatever. I was home for a few months. So I had spent the better part of 2 months talking to David Wilcock on the phone every day. Telling him, yeah, like we got along really well. I like him very much as a person.
I do too.
All of the other stuff aside, like him very much as a person. I enjoyed talking with him. So, you know, a lot of it was just us shooting the shit like two guys would. And so I'm not sure if I can swear on your show. I'll try and hold that back. But the other part was me telling him everything that was in the blog before I wrote the blog, before I had any intention of writing the blog. And yeah, so that's how I came to know. And at the time he was, you know, kind of dating Corey, and to put it that way as a joke. But hearing Corey out, and I guess I can just jump right into the way it all kind of came out to me was David had been doing a conference in LA, I believe it was. He had invited myself and my girlfriend at the time to come. He also invited Corey, and Corey went, and I did not. And he called me when he dropped Corey off at the hotel, and his words were to me, you know, I just dropped Corey back off at a hotel, after a 5-star hotel, after feeding him, what was it, sushi and steak, and I think I've got everything I can out of him now. I'd really like to focus on you and your story. And then he went on to tell me about this deal that he had with Gaia TV, and how he needed a person to play that role. And I had turned it down because at that time I hadn't written the Ruiner blog. I hadn't come public really at all, other than a few people did know me and know about me because I had shared my story with them personally or whatnot, but wasn't really a public thing. And so I had turned him down. Shortly after that, like within 4 days, the Blue Avian story came out of nowhere, and the Sphere Being Alliance came out of nowhere, and all of this stuff came out of Corey.
What time? This was 2015?
Yeah, it would have been in February of the month. And
okay. Right. I remember it well. David was excitedly calling me and telling me he had an insider. I think that must have been about March or April when he started calling me and telling me that he had the insider. So, so you knew Corey before the Blue Avians showed up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that was why, like, I knew about the Blue Avian program prior to Corey ever coming out with it. And when he came out with it, it was really kind of odd to me because I was like, okay, where did you even hear this from? And I knew it was a program. I knew it was something that wasn't real. So I think that David heard about it and put it in Corey's ear. And, it's very easy to backtrack at this point in time and see what Corey has done. He's just synthesized a bunch of different whistleblower stuff. He's put it together. He's made it his own story, and he's presented it as if it is his own. And I personally believe that there was a concoction between him and David, or like a collaboration on that story at that time, just because of the way that I saw it play out, the things that David had said to me. And I did try to speak with David, man to man about all of this, but he refused. I think the last message he sent me on Skype said something like, "The Alliance has told me I have to avoid you or else I'm not getting any more information out of them," which is complete bullshit. That's just his cop-out way of not having to have that discussion with me. And, I've left it open to this day to talk to me, but he refuses. Same with Corey.
Yeah, well, there's some people who have intimated to me that there's something that Corey has on David. I don't know what it is. So maybe we'll find out if the trial goes ahead as it's planned to. So, because Corey will definitely be put on the stand, I guarantee it. And he better not commit perjury either. That's really interesting. So you kind of confirmed my worst fears. I've been in denial about David's involvement for a long time and thought that he was just getting conned over like everybody else did. But I have to be honest with you, I have heard from another person who agrees with you, and they have really good evidence. They heard them doing it. They heard Corey and David actually putting together a storyline. With David, actually, this person told me that David was in command of the story. And he was constantly telling Corey, no, not Corey, not that, this, don't say that, say this. And this actually was told to me by a very famous person, and I didn't want to ever come out with it because I just didn't believe it. But I said, if I got a second person that would come in and say it, then I would have to start believing it. So, and I got to be honest with you, I was his producer at Gaia, and he wanted a second show. At the time, he was desperate. He needed money. I couldn't get him a raise because of the way that the company is structured. Everybody had to make the same because, George, Norrie, and David are going to talk at some conference. And if George is making $1,000 more than David's going to get all pissed off. So everybody had to make the same, right? So everybody got the same. And I couldn't give him a raise. I couldn't. It was against the rules. So I said, well, here, David, you can create another show. You'll have two shows. You'll get double the amount. And he went crazy, and he started trying to do different things. Some were very interesting, interviews with Graham Hancock and Robert Bivall, and those were really good. And then one day, I think it must have been late June of 2015 was when Corey showed up at Gaia. And I'd gone back and looked at his postings and stuff on Avalon, and you're right, there was no Blue Avians. The Blue Avian story, I'm going to say it right now, was concocted for Gaia. It was a spiritual story that was concocted for Gaia. What they did, Corey back engineered Gaia, looked at the programming, saw what they would like, and created a story to sell it, help sell them. That's it. That's what I think happened.
I agree with you, and that's what I've been saying since the time came out. It's everybody wanted to say oh, this is some type of disinformation campaign. They're possessed by this demon, they're that. And no, this is just people who are looking to make money. If you look at where both of them were personally in that situation, which I'm not going to air anyone's dirty laundry, but neither one of them they were both in a place where they needed that money. Let's leave it at that. Right. And from there, it becomes very easy. And I've been kind of outspoken about, people using experiences like this and turning it into a business. And it really kind of bothers me because I am an experiencer, and there's a lot of people out there who'd never ever come forward because they see this shit and they and they don't want to be a part of it. And I absolutely respect that. So I try to speak on their behalf and say people like Corey need to shut up and stop doing this. And if they're really going to run around and start suing everybody and all that jazz, then that kind of just, I always say the proof is in the result. His character has always been the proof that everyone needs that he is not telling you the truth.
Yeah, I like that about you, is that you talk about his character, and I think that's exactly what needs to be concentrated on here. I think I heard one of your interviews, and you said, "Oh, people think he's a spy. People think he's a crook. But how about he's just not a nice person?" And I thought, yeah, that's pretty much it. He's just not a nice guy, and he's not. And the suing, and his lawyer constantly writing me letters telling me she's going to have me arrested for witness tampering. I guess talking to you might be called witness tampering. I don't know. I don't know who the witnesses are, so I don't know who I'm tampering with, right? And so you saw this early on, and I guess you jumped ship at a certain point, right, with Corey, when you realized that it was all just BS.
Yeah, I told him directly, what I thought, and that I didn't want anything to do with it, and that I believed he was lying. And I was, I didn't make it public, other than I wrote the blog and people found it and took it. But I was trying not to, make it a personal thing between him and I. He did that by starting to post, private conversations that we had, and he was posting them, like, parts of them, not showing the context of what was said. And then once, all I did, and all I will do with anyone who wants to play that game with me, is just show the context of what was said, right? And so I had done that, and that's when people went, oh. And some friends from the forums had put together this large PDF of all of his behavior over the years, and all the things that he deleted and the admins deleted on his behalf, because that was the other thing that was going on. These forums that he started his platform on would delete his crappy behavior, right? They would delete any evidence of him backtracking or making stuff up.
That's why I never found it.
He had a relationship with them where he could actually just message them and be like, oh, I need you to delete this post for me, stuff like that. And yeah, people were catching it along the way. The PDF got made. I put out the screenshots, and it was all right there, black and white, for everyone to read. Anything that may incriminate me is also included in there, right? So
Sure.
Obviously, I'm not trying to hide anything, but yeah, he obviously was.
I'm just trying to get everything straightened out. That's all I'm trying to do. And whatever responsibility I have in this, which I do, I just, I want to make sure that I spend a period of my life making this right. That's all I want to do.
I appreciate that, Jay. If you don't mind me cutting you off for a second, I've always looked at you as being, complicit in all of this, and so it's really nice to see that you are coming forward and trying to make amends for a mistake that you made, right? I never saw it as oh, he's probably just some bad guy who wants this to happen. A lot of good people made a mistake with Corey, and that's fair and that's valid. And I'm proud of seeing someone like you come forward and make amends for that. So kudos to you, Jay.
Well, I think that con men depend on good people. I hate to say it. I mean, you can't con a con man, but you can con a nice person who's going to believe you. And of course, he back engineered his story. And again, I wish he back engineered his story, so he added in things to the story that weren't there originally, looking at the posts. So the Blue Avians is certainly one of them. Hang on here, I got some message going in. Blue Avians is one of them. And then the second one is the sun will explode, okay, the coronal mass ejection. And that just happened to be, both of my books that I co-wrote were about a cross in the south of France, 400-year-old cross, which predicts a solar explosion, a coronal mass ejection in the future at some point. And clearly it was a secret society that built this cross. And I wrote these two books, co-wrote them with Vincent Bridges. And then I made a documentary about it. And clearly Corey had probably not read the books because they're pretty heavy, but he did see the documentary and decided that in order to sell the job to me, because I'm no doubt he's getting downloaded from David about me, because he's gonna have to work with me. So he's redirecting the story so it would appeal to me too. So the Blue Avians appealed to the staff at Gaia. I never really cared much for the Blue Avian story, but the solar explosion part of his story, I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I thought this is confirmation of all 20 years of my research, right? This guy is confirming that the people in the secret space program are really concerned about the same exact thing that I'm concerned about, right? And it was brilliant. I have to say, it was a brilliant con. So
yeah, there was a certain amount of that happened with Corey approaching David as well, because David, as we know, has an affinity to the law of one. And Corey's original, twist into getting with David was by focusing on something that, again, you can go back and look at forum posts a year before he thought were bullshit, and now all of a sudden they are the law, right? So there you go. And all they did was do that same thing on you.
Yeah, and then of course constantly saying to David, every time David would bring up the law of one, Corey would go, "Huh, I never read it." It's like, come on, man, you never read it. Just out of sheer curiosity, you would have to read it because David's blabbing about it so much. I mean, even I bought it, and I don't even like channeling that much, but I even bought the book and read it because of David's enthusiasm for it, right? And so I want to ask you, just to break away from this one subject for a moment. You said that you were an experiencer. Can you tell me briefly exactly what you mean by that?
Yes. Well, I grew up within various cults and was a part of, the programs that people talk about, the blog and my own podcast where I talk a lot about that type of stuff. You could check that out to get fuller details about, everything that I've claimed or have experienced. But yeah, from the age of, say, 4 to about 26, that was my life. And I still had some involvement with it all, just kind of peripherally since then, kind of. But
so you were involved in programs?
Yes.
Really? And did they wipe you or mind wipe you, or do you remember everything?
They've tried. I'm one of that small percentage that can't be hypnotized, so a lot of it just stuck. And that was a lot of like the moniker the ruiner comes from the fact that I ruined a lot of their kind of plans for me, and I would ruin a lot of their experiments because they couldn't trick my mind in the way that they were used to tricking other people's minds within the programs. And I'm not unique in that. There's lots of people who that is also true for, but that's where it came from.
And so you'd think that they'd be doubly interested in you as a person who can't be fooled. You would think, right?
Yeah, and I was given I think it was about 19 years of age where they kind of gave up on trying to control me in that sense. And they kind of took me on a different path where they were educating me, trying to get me to, it's like trying to get me on their side by force didn't work. So they were almost like dangling carrots for me by giving me all of this stuff that they knew I was curious about. They knew that I, wanted to take in and wanted to see. And then, again, okay, now that we've shown you that, hey, will you do this for us? No. Right. And what had happened with me is I had children and wanted to make sure that they didn't end up
in a program
or suffering anything because of what was going on with me. So I had to make a deal with them to release me as it was, which involved me running through a project for them, dealing with a paranormal studies thing here in Canada, collecting a bunch of information that they ended up burying. It's not what they told me they were going to do, but that's what they ended up doing. So that was kind of my dirty deed for them. Right. And then after that, they kind of erased everything for me. Like they had emptied my bank accounts and destroyed my credit rating and got rid of my education records. And there was even like this thing that had happened where they tried to get rid of my adoption or tried to get rid of my birth certificate, not realizing that I have 2 because I was actually adopted when I was 6 and the other one was still there. So I was still able to go get all my ID, but in another name, so that I was able to get like 2 forms of ID in different names. So they kind of fucked themselves over in that sense, but things like that they tried to do in order to make sure that I couldn't move forward very well. And I've stated this before, the basic rules are just not to name names and locations that are actionable. Okay, if I tell you that Joe Blow lives at this place and he does that, then you could go there, you could confront him, and that's more dangerous for you than it is for them, but that's what they want to avoid, so that's the rule.
So was this part of the secret space program?
Well, I was involved with some of the simulations that have gone on to become the secret space program and kind of seen what their space program is, yes.
So this ability that you have to see through the BS, that must have been what caused you to see through Corey's BS.
Oh yeah, there's certain tactics that I know to just trip someone up in lying. And if you go back and look at my conversations with him, you'll see it. Very simple explanation is like, oh man, this meeting that we had last night, it was like, that was intense. Oh yeah, I totally remember it, but me, I know there was no meeting, right? So things like that are very simple, but there's a lot more of them if you go back and dissect my conversation with him. And there's been other people within the community who have tried to gain the same platform as him, doing the same thing since then, who have tried to do so through me and not had that success because I can see through that bullshit. So,
well, yeah, that Corey must not like you then.
I was like, if you go back to when he had his first Spirit Being Alliance blog, the first blog posts about how the Illuminati had sent this campaign out to get him, I was that guy, right? Like, I was the most highly trained Illuminati agent to ever be released on the alternative community, all set out to discredit Corey Goode and David Wilcock. Proof again in the results. That's not the direction I went, and here I am still. Speaking about them both as if they're just humans who deserve some sort of compassion and understanding,
Yep.
but also need to be looked at for who they are. And
right. I completely agree with you. We both need to give them our compassion. Corey, pretty much screwed himself out of any job he would ever have by getting that cease and desist order against him in 2014, and so he had to do something. I mean, he would never be able to work again. Insurance companies would never let you hire him because he was a risk. And people would not want to work with a guy who had that kind of order being given to him. So it was over for him. So he was forced into the situation. Now, I have wrestled with this thing now for a long time. And I'm going to tell you a little story before I tell you my theory. And I think you're going to disagree with my theory, and that's fine. In 2014, early, maybe January, I got a phone call at Gaia at my desk. My desk phone rang, which means I had to call the lobby, the woman running the front lobby, and then the receptionist, and then she had to send it on to me. That's how that works. So they called up the main number of Gaia and they asked for Jay Weidner, and she sent it on to me. My phone never rings. I was always on my cell phone, right? So I was like, whoa, who's calling me, right? So I pick up the phone and there's a voice, it's a man, and he says, I've never told this story in public. I mean, on my show here. It says, hi, Jay Weidner. And I go, yeah. He goes, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah. And I'm with the CIA. And I laughed and I said, yeah. And I'm Keith Richards and I'm the lead guitarist of the Stones. And he said, no, I really am. And I said, I don't know, no, I really am. Right? We went back and forth like this. And then finally there's this long pause. And then this guy proceeds to tell me what I eat, what my favorite foods are, where I go to vacation, where I go to eat, intimate things that I didn't think anybody knew, all right? And going on and on for like 5 or 6 minutes. And I'm like horrified, completely horrified by this. And finally I said, okay. I got it. You know who I am, all right? He goes, good. And I said, so you also know then that I'm probably one of the biggest critics of the CIA. And I hate what you guys do, especially overseas when you're overthrowing people. And he goes, well, there's a lot of people in the agency who actually agree with you. I went, really? He said, yeah, a lot of people think we go too far. And we like you. And we just want to know that we have your back. And I was like, whoa, that's weird. And then I said, what are you really calling me about? He goes, well, you don't really think that you can start a TV network and not have our scrutiny, do you? I went, well, I wondered about that for almost 2 years now. Well, how it's going to happen. He says, we like what you guys are doing. We're not going to mess with you, but there are other agencies that are going to mess with you. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, I would watch out for a dirty trick. He said, there's going to be a dirty trick on you guys in the future that's going to damage your credibility. You got to be on the lookout for the dirty trick. And, I was like, okay, I don't know how I can be on the lookout for something that I don't know what it is. And then he said goodbye to me, and I never heard from him again. So, a year and a half later, Corey Goode shows up, right? And the reason I'm going to ask you this question is because there's something about Corey's behavior which mystifies me. And that is this. When Corey left Gaia to go make movies and all that other stuff, why did he constantly trash Gaia? Why would you trash the network that made you into a superstar? It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, even if I was angry at a Gaia, I wouldn't voice it in public because it makes me look bad, right? I was doing business with somebody who was bad, right? So I would never do that because it makes me look bad. And so that kind of always feeds this idea, this question in my mind: was Corey sent in to destroy Gaia, or is it just for money? What's your opinion?
Just for money. That's not to say that, that can't be utilized at this point. I talk about the way that people get manipulated. It's because there's something in them that can be manipulated, right? A personality trait, some type of disorder, anything like that. Maybe some skeleton in the closet, even if you need to look at things at that kind of surface level. But usually a personality disorder, which that man clearly has, right? And so it's very easy for them. And I don't know the circumstances of why he left Gaia, but I would imagine that if there was even just any air of, maybe Gaia's not buying his bullshit anymore, or just doesn't want to do business and aren't putting him on that pedestal anymore, that would be his childish retaliation towards Gaia. It would be like, oh, screw them, like that they gave up the prize horse because his ego is that way about the things that he says. And it's also very possible for them to come to him after the fact and be like, hey, feed that influence or feed that negativity towards Gaia so that he does speak out against them. But based on what I know and knowing them both and how everything that went on them coming to you, that was a money-making thing. That was maybe a prime opportunity for whoever wanted to destroy Gaia or do you dirty to take advantage of. But the root of it is definitely.
That's really interesting. You do have his personality down. I got to tell you, you really do. I'm probably going to go with you and what you're saying because you were there and you saw it at the beginning. I wasn't. They were hiding it all from me, and because I needed to be their point person, so they couldn't tell me anything. And I figured it out in April of 2016. I began getting suspicious in April 2016 when he lifted the script for my movie, The Last Avatar. And then, and literally 3 weeks after Last Avatar, my movie opened up on Gaia. He's in front of my cameras, essentially telling the whole tale of The Last Avatar as if he's the guy, right? The star. And even goes into the underground, and he's, a beautiful, maiden, initiates him, the whole entire movie, right? And that's when I started like going, wait a minute here. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt because one of my assistants, who I really trust, she said to me, well, he smokes a lot of pot. I went, well, what does that mean? And she said, well, maybe he was just really, really loaded. And Stacy had it on, and he missed the first 5 minutes, so he didn't see it was your movie. And then he sat down, loaded, and sort of half watched it and took it in and thought it was a memory. And I thought, okay, I'll give you that. I'll go that distance. See, even then, I'm giving him the slack that he doesn't deserve, right? And he's stealing my stuff right in front of me. And but it really didn't break down until August of 2017 at Shasta when I gave him, when I met this other guy, Michael Gerloff, who was in the Secret Space Program. And he was sort of like you. He was in the programs early on and everything. And I was really excited because he was the real deal. Like, he looked like a Marine, right? He shaved head and big shoulders, and just looked like a guy you'd want to serve with in the Marines. And he said he was in the Marines, and they went into the Secret Space Program. And so I introduced him to Corey, really excitedly. And Corey wouldn't talk to him, wouldn't shake his hand, wouldn't do anything, just kind of looked like a deer in the headlights, right? I would not even say hello to him. I was like stunned. And then I was like, there's something wrong here. I mean, you're two bros served together in the same thing. You're going to be like hugging each other and comparing stories and talking about which CO you didn't like, and what CO you did like, and right, and all that. But no, that didn't happen. So it was not. That's when I started falling down. So all through the fall of 2017, I'm getting worse and worse. All right. It was actually really comical. they're coming in, they're shooting, and I'm with my crew in the studio watching it on the monitor, and I'm actually predicting what Corey's going to say before he says it. Watch out, he's going to say this now, and then he says it. And I go, oh, watch out, this is going to happen. And then it would happen, and I was like, because I just had his story so down, and I think somebody in the control room must have told Corey that I didn't believe his story anymore, because that's when he started going cold on me. And you're right, the reason that he left Gaia was because the producer that had been assigned to a show didn't believe a word he said. And she told me straight up, I don't believe a word this guy's saying, right? And he, he didn't, And another time he was in another producer's office, and this producer's a good friend of mine, said, hey, Corey, do you have like any, do your neighbors ever see, the flying saucers landing, in your yard? And Corey just got up and stormed out of the office. It was like, so slowly it was decaying and falling apart. And then he started making up this whole thing about the Alliance. And David really wanted to join the Alliance. But the Alliance said to David, no, you can't join the Alliance because your ego is too big. I'm not kidding you. And so then one day I said to David, was walking by, I said, I think the Alliance is going to contact you. And he goes, you think so? I go, yeah, I think you're going to get contacted really soon, maybe even tonight. And he said, really? How do you know this? I said, it's just a hunch, because I could see the chemistry between the two. And I realized that David was starting to get skeptical, right? I knew Corey had to pull something off. Sure as hell that night, David got a phone call from a robotic voice. Yep, no kidding. A robotic voice telling him all the stuff that he wanted to hear. And the next day he was in the Alliance, he thought. And I thought, my God, Corey, you are just unbelievable. So
that's he made a comment to me about like 16 pages of emails or something like that, so showing how I was going to weaponize all of our conversations that I was having with them. I was like, I didn't record any of our conversations. How would I weaponize those?
Well, that's because he was recording and he was going to weaponize them. That's the MO I'm hearing, is that he records everything. So, be real careful if you're talking to Corey, because he's recording you.
Oh, no, I was actually talking about David.
Oh,
David. David would record all our conversations, I'm sure. I just didn't record them for myself. I didn't care that he was recording. He's welcome to do with whatever he wants with them. But it was just funny because he was talking about me weaponizing our conversations against him. And I'm like, dude, I have no ill will against you at all. And I'm avoiding your name even when I'm talking about Corey. So that's clearly not true. Oh, well, the Alliance told me I can't talk to you. No, Corey told you. You can't talk to me. Yeah.
That's Corey. I guarantee it. So you saw like a video. I don't know if you want to talk about this or not. If you don't want, that's fine. But you saw a video early on of Corey and somebody else concocting the whole thing.
Him and his wife, and it's not something like I've mentioned it, but it's something I don't talk a lot about because it's something I can't verify, right? So it's like it's my word against whatever, and I recognize that, and so it was more or less like someone who I'm still in contact with outside of all this alternative media stuff that is still involved had kind of been like, hey, just so that you know how right you are, look at this, and that's all I needed. Like, it was just, it was really just for me. I probably should have never said anything publicly, but I did. I have to take responsibility for that, but I can't verify it, obviously. So it's a throwaway data point at this point. But it was not that I wasn't convinced already. It was just it really kind of just made me laugh, because I was like, oh my goodness, like, David likes the law of one. We should really focus more on that. Is there any way to conclude raw in this?
Wow. That was how they suckered David in.
And lady, if you're listening to me, I'm quoting you. So at least I've proven it to the two of you.
Yeah, well, I know a lot about their relationship, and I'd rather not know it. So, yeah. So that's interesting. Well, I don't know. You have anything else you want to add?
Not really, other than I'm kind of hoping that this whole experience has woken people up to how easy it is for, someone in my position to take advantage of situations, right? Like, I could have taken that role, and I could have let someone script what my experiences into a bigger, more sexy story, and I could have been that guy, but I saw that coming because I know how this media can work, and I could just feel it. And that's why I backed off, and I told my story privately on my own, unintentionally even, because we'll go back to that after, but I avoided that. So I think overall, people really need to stop putting whistleblowers, people who have experienced these things, on a pedestal and buying them hook, line, and sinker. Because, there's a lot of ways in which we were lied to. There's a lot of things that we ran through as simulations that we believe are real that aren't really real. They have an incredible power to run you through psychological simulations. And things that people talk about in this community, like the 20 and back program. If the elite had the ability to regress their age by 20 years, don't you think they would be using it? They're clearly not. Look at David Rockefeller. What makes a lot more sense? Putting you in a psychological state where you live out a life that is 20 years and then waking you back up out of that. And in your memory, yes, that might make you believe that you lived a 20-year back program, but you didn't. It was a couple hours in a chair somewhere. And things like that need to get sunk into people's heads so that they stop pushing these stories into something like they're not. Otherwise, we end up with things like the fucking blue aliens. No offense to anybody, but that's a problem.
I like where you're going with this. So you're talking about like cytronic warfare, where they can put memories in your head and give you experiences, and yeah, that should be a very big concern to our community, because they can do it. There's no doubt. I've talked to people who've actually had it done to them. They can make you think you just had a conversation with Jesus. I'm not kidding you. They can. And so I think a lot of that is part of the problem. The other thing that Corey did, which is ironic, because your point of view is that, he's just doing it for money, which I think you're probably right. But he ruined the whole disclosure movement. Nobody will come forward now. Nobody. I have 10 guys waiting to come forward, and they won't do it. So I'm not going to get doxxed. I'm not going to get doxxed by Corey Goode and his gang. Are you crazy? Right? Yeah. And I'm like, oh no. So will you come on anonymously? Well, maybe I might, but then that loses all of its, if it's anonymous, and it loses all of its luster, because you want the guy to really tell his story in a truthful way. And their stories are much more believable than Corey's, believe me.
I was the first person he ever doxed. People forget that too. He was the first person to not that I was ever hiding it, but he went ahead and as soon as he figured out it was me. At first he thought it was two other people from a forum, and he was the FBI had contacted him and told him that he was right and all of that, and he was posting like that. And I'm just sitting there, we're reading those posts going, he, I wrote that. But eventually he figured out it was me, and then my bands were posted, my full name was posted, where I lived was posted, and all that. Not that I cared, but yes, those people who have those concerns are legitimate concerns, because if he knows, he will, people will do that. But you shouldn't be coming forward if you feel the need to hide that stuff anyways.
That's what I think. Yes. But it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing when you've got followers who will do anything for you. That's the key to understanding why he's doxing people, because he actually has followers that may carry through with this stuff. That's why it's so scary. Because again, it's like Charlie Manson. He never murdered anybody, but he gave the orders and he intimated it.
There's lots of those going on in the alternative community right now, and it's kind of dangerous. It's as someone who was raised within a cult, they're cults. That's exactly what they are. They may not view themselves as that, but that's what they are, and they should be avoided.
No, several people have broken off with Corey recently. It's been quite amazing, and not all of them have contacted me, but some have, and they've told me straight out, "Oh, you were right from the beginning, Jay. It's a cult. It's a cult." And so they all agree with you that it's a cult, and it is. Another funny thing before we go is that Corey's going on and telling everyone that I've been after him for like 2.5 years. Just want to say this. I never said a word in public about Corey Goode until April of 2019, 1 year ago. So I've only been out a year. It may seem like 2.5 years to Corey, but it's really just 1 year. And so, and I don't really want to hassle him because he has a family, and I'm concerned about his family, and they're all locked in together and all that. And I hope everything is okay. I do have compassion for Corey. He's shown none for me, but I'm not bringing any lawsuits against him, even though I could. I'm not going to the police and reporting that he's doxed me. He just doxed me when he put the court documents out a month ago. My name, my full name, my address, and everything. Everybody's were. And he illegally put those documents out before he served anybody. That is a crime. That is a crime. And he committed it. And his lawyer must have caught it because he took it down about 3 hours later. So his lawyer probably called him and said, you're committing a crime right now. You got to take that down. But it was too late. Copies got out everywhere. I mean, I've got a copy. And he won't serve me either. And his problem why he won't serve me is because when he filed the documents against me and Guy and the other people, $5 million lawsuit, then Roger and Leon Kennedy, who were formerly worked with Corey, told Corey that they were going to testify for Gaia against him. So now he has to sue Roger and Leon before he sues Gaia and Jay, because he can't afford to have them come to our trial, right? So he has to get like a gag order on him. And that's what's going on there. So that's kind of what's happening on the legal front as far as Corey is concerned. He's got a lot of problems. I don't know. I don't know where this is going to end, but I'm looking at something dramatic, pulling some kind of dramatic stunt. I have no idea what, but that's what I think where this is headed, is some kind of dramatic stunt, not legal stunt, something that out of the blue to gain sympathy from the community.
Well, he's done that before already too. So, yeah, people donating him to go on vacation because he's so hurt from the meetings that he's not going to.
Yes, or got hurt from his producer screaming at him, which I never did, And if I had even screamed at one person in my entire 7 years at Gaia, I would have been written up. They would have gone straight to my bosses and complained about me.
Well, let me tell you, as someone who's actually been yelled at by a fucking Draco reptilian, that if you're used to dealing with the things that he's used to dealing with, then, someone like Jay Weidner's not that scary. No offense, Jay.
He's kind of saying more about himself than he is about me in that. Yeah. Well, listen, Shane, it's been really great having you on, Clear the Air here. I've been wanting to have you on, and weird stuff was always preventing me. Like I knew what this one guy who had interviewed you knew your contact info, then he got mad at me. So he wouldn't talk to me. And then I knew a woman who had your contact info, then she got mad at me. So I was like, what's going on here? Every time I'm about to contact Shane, right, I get in a fight with somebody and then I can't contact him. So I've actually been trying to contact you for like 6 months now. And we finally got into contact, and I got to have you on because you just strike me as a guy who's a real level-headed and, somebody I would like to have working for me in my company or something.
Well, thank you for that. And again, thank you for, doing your part to clear up the air. And, I just really hope that everyone in the community can see this as a learning experience and, start focusing on, us as a community instead of trying to take one member of the community and throw them up on that pedestal. We all have a story. We all have a voice in this choir. So
yeah, no more pedestals, and we got to police ourselves. And we have to be kind and compassionate while we police ourselves. And, and don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what? I think your story is BS, man. Sorry. And we got to say it if we feel it. And you know what? If you're telling a story and people are calling you and saying that you're a BSer, then don't tell your story if you're hurt by it. Go away,
Yeah, if you have conviction in what you're saying, then it's not going to matter, right? If people think that you're full of shit, that's
exactly right.
There you go.
All right, man. Shane the Ruiner, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Jay. Nice meeting you, and take care, everybody.
Yep. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching Reality Check. Please subscribe, hit like, and all that. And I have a lot of exciting programming coming up. So thank you very much for watching.